In central Chile, where the only sounds are the wind and the birds, geoscientists are looking for signs that could interrupt the area's peaceful atmosphere. And here in Laguna del Maule, they believe they've found those signs in a volcanic field that has risen an unprecedented 6.5 feet since 2007.
This volcanic field, Laguna del Maule, is unique in the Andes and maybe in the entire world because there is a very large amount of rhyolite erupted very recently in the last 20,000 years.
Bradley Singer is leading a team of researchers here. They're studying rhyolite, an explosive type of magma with high concentrations of gases, water, and carbon dioxide.
We have rhyolite over here, the Barrancas complex on the skyline.
This abundance of rhyolite has prompted Chile and Argentina to closely monitor the Andes volcanic chain. Any eruption could have the potential to devastate nearby hydroelectric projects. It could also pump out ash that could wipe out crops across Argentina and severely disrupt global air traffic.
We are studying all the possible scenarios, rigorously evaluating all of the evidence that we can gather. But it is showing signs of reactivation. It is like a cardiac patient, must be monitored very closely in order to determine the signals.
Signals that could give officials enough time to prepare for the worst-case scenario.
Is Mount St. Helens waking up? A rash of earthquakes recently hit underneath the volcano.
It is not a warning indicator of an imminent eruption.
Seismologist Weston Thielen says the earthquakes tell scientists that the process of magma moving into the volcano is continuing, driving off fluids and gases that fill cracks beneath the surface, inducing the small quakes.
Just a simple reminder that things are still active down there and that Mount St. Helens will erupt again. It is not imminent.
We're hearing the heartbeat of Mount St. Helens here through these earthquakes.
Westby says the quakes indicate Mount St. Helens is subtly repressurizing, but little more. To worry, they would need to detect this again, see abnormal ground uplift or movement, and find changes in volcanic gases, which they're not.
We would need to see many more signals that would indicate any kind of concern on our part.
The recent seismic activity alone is simply more data, lending welcome insight into the temperament of a volcano that has proven to us, if even 36 long years ago now, that it is capable of blowing its top with the best of them.
The more earthquakes we record, the more we understand about the volcano.
Scientists have learned that the brightest supernova ever observed wasn't an exploding star at all. Instead, the star was ripped apart by a giant black hole. How big of a black hole? Up to 3 billion times more massive than the sun. Scientists say the hole's gravitational pull, quote, spaghettified the star, stretching it until it was pulled apart. That's called a tidal disruption. When scientists first discovered the event, they said it was twice as bright as any supernova ever seen. But after months of further study, they found clues that it likely wasn't a supernova. First was the red backdrop. Large reddish galaxies usually aren't where you find the kind of stars needed for the brightest supernovas. Another clue? It happened at the center of the galaxy, where supermassive black holes usually reside. The final tip was heat. Instead of cooling down over time like a supernova normally would, the area got hot again and stayed warm for months. Even if it wasn't the most brilliant supernova ever, the event is still rare. Scientists have discovered a tidal disruption only about 10 times.
A dangerous sinkhole has opened up along a cliff in Pacifica, California, south of San Francisco. The sinkhole has swallowed up part of a pathway to a popular beach, and the beach has been closed. There's no word on when or if the beach will be reopened. The barricade and sign closing off the beach access was erected over the weekend. It's in an area that already has experienced significant beach erosion. Just last March, some apartments in the area had to be demolished for safety reasons. The erosion is due to heavy rain and high waves. There has also been extreme high tides known as king tides. Coastal residents won't be getting a break anytime soon. Another storm is looming off the coast.
we've been focusing on the controversial Dakota Access Pipeline in Morton County, North Dakota. In Billings County, North Dakota, there's been an oil spill from another pipeline.
An oil leak in North Dakota that has spilled tens of thousands of gallons of crude oil has been contained. This according to North Dakota state officials. An estimated 176,000 gallons of crude oil spilled from a 6-inch steel pipeline owned by the True Cause Company out of Wyoming. Some of that oil making its way as far as 6 miles along a tributary of the Little Missouri River. Now, the spill happened just outside of Belfield, North Dakota, west of the capital city of Bismarck, and about 150 miles from Cannonball, North Dakota, where thousands of environmental activists continue their campaign against construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline. Now, according to state observers, there are around 60 workers involved in the cleanup effort that have recovered around 37,000 gallons of that oil. Now, we mentioned that some of that oil did make its way into a waterway that has since frozen over, so some of that oil is actually trapped underneath the ice. Harsh winter conditions in North Dakota have prevented a full assessment of the cause for the leak. Having that said, the company behind the ruptured pipeline has reported as many as 36 such incidents since 2006, which amounts to somewhere around 320,000 combined gallons of leaked petroleum products.
The reason that I have called for a review is really to just gather all the threads of the investigations, the intelligence work that has been done over many months, and put it in a single document that can be shared with members of Congress, relevant intelligence agencies. They can be shared with the transition team so that they understand what exactly happened, and so that the public and our elected representatives going forward can find ways to prevent this kind of interference from having an impact on the elections in the future.
On Tuesday, U.S. District Judge Kevin Castile told federal prosecutors to show him the search warrant application used so the FBI could access emails from Hillary Clinton's private server that were found shortly before the November 8th presidential election. Castile ordered prosecutors by Thursday to turn over the application. The order was made as Castile considered whether any part of the search warrant materials could be made public in response to a lawsuit filed by Randall Schoenberg. Schoenberg said the public had a strong interest in the release of the materials. He said transparency was crucial due to the possible influence the investigation had on the outcome of the election.
As online petitions receive millions of signatures pleading for the Electoral College to break from Donald Trump and vote for Hillary Clinton, the Republican National Committee has a plan to whip the necessary 270 votes come December 19th. According to Politico, state party leaders and members of the Trump camp have been in touch with most of the GOP electors to ensure there are no defections. Party leaders are said to be communicating with electors through phone calls and letters, while monitoring their social media to make sure nothing runs amiss. Right now, only one Republican elector, a Texas man, has publicly stated he plans to break from voting for Trump. Two other electors, one in Georgia and one in Texas, are promising to resign before the December vote to avoid voting for the president-elect. Should everything go to plan, Trump will receive the 306 electoral votes allocated to him from the election. But if the 37 Republicans were to jump ship and vote for Clinton, she could conceivably have a shot at the presidency.
One look is enough to get you through this security gate. Amsterdam Airport is phasing in the technology over the next 2 years. Passports will be checked once on arrival and then never taken out again.
Facial biometrics is unique, and in this case we transform documents and transactions into your face, so your face becomes your passport.
Next year, MasterCard wants its customers to start shopping with selfies.
So I open the app, confirm the amount and the merchant, so I click on that to say yes, and then ask to take a picture, and very important, I need to blink my eyes to make sure that it's a live person and not a picture that was shown in front of the camera.
Beyond faces and fingerprints, biometric data comes from eyes, DNA, heartbeats and voices. Keys or passwords can be stolen, but no one can pretend to be you. This payments expert thinks it's only a matter of time.
I believe that 2/3 of the world will ultimately end up paying with biometrics. I think the emerging markets will be a lot faster to adopt because they don't have our notions of privacy in the US and Europe. But ultimately, I think it'll also end up seeping by choice into developed markets. If I give you a lot more convenience, you'll probably use at least some of the time.
Drones could save lives in the near future, flying to hard-to-reach areas or responding to mass shootings and natural disasters. It's called Health Integrated Rescue Operations.
We were able to create somewhat of like an ambulance drone to be able to go out to where there's a victim from an unfortunate event.
Google Glass is part of the medical kits allowing first responders to see and instruct bystanders on how to help.
It allows a patient who has a life-threatening condition to be treated faster.
The project includes recommendations from the Department of Homeland Security's Stop the Bleed initiative, encouraging people on scene to act quickly to stop blood loss. The packs also have a wide range of uses.
There is definite utility not just in medical use in certain areas, but in a broad spectrum of the first responder and Homeland Security responsibilities.
According to CBS News, New Yorkers were in a frenzy Monday afternoon at the sight of a plane that appeared to be circling Manhattan. One social media user wrote, "This plane that's been circling over Manhattan is starting to freak me out." Other social media users pointed out the plane seemed to be a C-130, a military aircraft. A Washington Post reporter said on Twitter that Colonel Broccoli of the 106th Rescue Wing said the C-130 was doing standard military training, and it was cleared by the FAA. However, Eric Durr, Director of Public Affairs at New York State Division of Military and Naval Affairs, told Mashable the plane was an HC-130, a search and rescue aircraft, conducting an authorized flight over the city.
There's the military helicopters. Don't know what in God's name they're doing. Don't know why they're doing circles around us.
Iran's President Hassan Rouhani has told the nation's scientists to start developing nuclear-powered ships for the Navy. Rouhani says he ordered the research and development program because the United States had violated their landmark deal that was agreed just last year. Now, under that deal, the US pledged to lift sanctions on Iran in return for Iran curbing its nuclear program. But earlier this month, the US Senate voted to extend an act of Congress that gives the president the power to reimpose sanctions at any time. Well, the White House says Iran's plans for nuclear-powered ships do not violate the deal.
And turning our attention now to Syria, in Aleppo, a military source has said government forces and their allies have taken full control over the districts abandoned by the rebels during their retreat in the city. Rebel defenses collapsed on Monday, leading to a broad army advance across more than half of the remaining rebel-held territory. It will constitute the biggest battlefield victory yet for President Bashar al-Assad and his military coalition made up of Syrian troops, Iran, the Russian Air Force, and various Shiite militias.
Elsewhere, the Russian foreign minister has expressed suspicion that the seizure of the Syrian city of Palmyra by Daesh might have been staged. Sergei Lavrov says Daesh terrorists' advance to the ancient desert city may have been engineered by the U.S. and its regional allies to divert attention from Aleppo. Lavrov says the fall of Palmyra raises the thought that it has been all orchestrated to give retreating militants in Aleppo a break. The Takfiri terrorist group recaptured Palmyra over the weekend. Months after it was forced out of the city, Russia has already blamed the loss on the United States.
In an effort to find peace for Syrians caught in the crossfire of a lingering civil war that has already claimed hundreds of thousands of lives, Pope Francis has penned a letter to Bashar al-Assad. The letter, which was hand-delivered on Monday by the Vatican's ambassador to Syria, Mario Zinari, calls for an end to the violence and the peaceful resolution of hostilities. Vatican City is one of the few Western nations that has maintained active diplomatic ties with Assad and has been increasing diplomatic pressure on Assad with an eye to becoming an integral negotiator in eventual peace talks.
It was the final official meeting of EU foreign affairs ministers this year, and their talks in Brussels were focused on Syria. In public, the ministers are still calling for President Bashar al-Assad to go, but analysts say that privately there is a realization that the West's attempt to overthrow al-Assad has failed. The EU now claims that its foreign policy priority towards Syria is to provide humanitarian aid.
Still, we do not have access to eastern Aleppo, and we urge those that have the responsibility to guarantee access to eastern Aleppo to allow humanitarian aid to the civilians.
Citizens who are still in East Aleppo are quickly running out of water, food and even the most basic of medical supplies. But while the EU would like to blame the Syrian government and its allies for this growing crisis, Damascus, Moscow and Tehran argue the Western countries that have been arming militants in Syria are in fact wholly responsible. The Syrian government is now close to regaining full control of Aleppo from foreign-backed militants. With the support of Russia and Iran, President al-Assad is also trying to defeat Daesh. US President-elect Donald Trump has made it clear that when it comes to the Middle East, that will be his priority once he takes office next month.
During his campaign, Trump pledged to move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. His campaign manager, Kellyanne Conway, reiterated that pledge and said it's a very big priority for Trump.
This is our capital. We waited 2,000 years to come back here, and we expect the world to acknowledge this fact and to recognize Jerusalem as our capital, and therefore we should have here the embassy.
He related a story from President Obama's recent trip to Israel.
I remember not long ago on Shimon Peres's funeral, the White House issued a statement saying the president was in Jerusalem, and then they changed it not to mention Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And this was in Western Jerusalem. It wasn't even in Eastern Jerusalem. And I think this is preposterous.
No country in the world recognizes Jerusalem as Israel's capital. A State Department official told CBN News, since Israel's founding, administrations of both parties have maintained a consistent policy of recognizing no state as having sovereignty over Jerusalem. We remain committed to this long-standing policy. But in 1995, the U.S. Congress passed the Jerusalem Embassy Act, mandating the move of the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. So far, every president has avoided the move, citing security concerns and signing a special waiver. Moving the embassy wouldn't make everyone happy.
There will be happiness on the Israeli side, there will be unhappiness on the Arab-Palestinian side. There may be riots, there may be violence.
Some say the move must come in the wider context of an Israeli-Palestinian peace agreement. Others believe Jerusalem is Israel's eternal, undivided capital. In the meantime, many say if the move is ever going to happen, Trump is the one to get the job done.
Yeah!